The silence that broke the courtroom. In the quiet town of Bellwood, Louisiana, a place draped in cypress shade and where magnolia blooms seemed to whisper old secrets, life moved at the rhythm of familiarity. It was the kind of town where every neighbor knew the name of your dog, where front porches still held swing chairs, and where change came only with great resistance. But in one house at the end of Willow Lane, silence had moved in, and it was louder than any scream. 7-year-old Nia Delaney had always been the kind of child who filled space. Her laughter used to echo down the hallways, her tiny feet pattering across wooden floors as she chased imaginary dragons and spun in dizzy circles on the lawn. Her mother, Camille Delaney, a nurse at the local hospital, often said Nia could light up a room just by being in it. But that light had gone out 1 month ago. Camille remembered the night with perfect clarity. She had come home late from her shift, expecting to find her daughter tucked in bed, probably having snuck an extra cookie and forgotten to brush her teeth. But the front door was ajar. The lock was undone. Panic hit instantly. Camille rushed in, calling out Nia's name. No answer. The house was still eerily so. She found Nia minutes later, curled inside her bedroom closet, silent and shaking. Her wide eyes stared past Camille, hollow and haunted. No explanation. No words. The police were called, but they found nothing. No signs of forced entry. No fingerprints. No broken locks. No footprints. It was as if the fear had crept in without ever touching the house. The officers left with polite skepticism. The file was closed. But Nia's silence remained. And then the patterns began. Every night, after being tucked in, Nia would slip from bed and sit by her window. She would stare into the backyard, unmoving, her forehead pressed to the glass. Camille had caught her the first night by accident, but soon it became routine. A nightly vigil. Always staring. Always silent. Camille's fear grew with every passing day. The town had moved on. The police had dismissed the incident. But something was wrong. Deeply, irrevocably wrong. Detective Grant Evans had been the only one who didn't brush her off. He returned a week later, drawn back by Camille's plea and the unease that had taken root in his own gut. He listened. Really listened. And when Camille told him about Nia's silence, the nightly window watches, the unspoken dread, he didn't call her hysterical. He suggested something different. Not therapy in the traditional sense. Not more talking. But a dog. Camille had never considered a therapy animal. But after hours of reading, researching, and soul-searching, she made the call. A week later, she and Nia visited a center on the outskirts of Bellwood. There, they met Dr. Allison Voss and a retired canine named Rex. He was large and imposing, his fur a mix of black and deep rust, a jagged scar running along his side like a badge of honor. He had once served in law enforcement and had been wounded protecting his handler. But when he stepped into the room with Nia, something shifted. Nia didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. But she reached out. For the first time since that night, her small hand extended, trembling, and touched Rex's muzzle. She pressed her fingers into his fur, and Camille felt her heart stutter. It wasn't a word. It wasn't a sentence. But it was something. And something was more than they had had in weeks. Rex came home with them. That night, Nia slept through the darkness. Rex curled at the foot of her bed, and she didn't get up to stare out the window. Camille stayed awake watching them, sipping tea with tears in her eyes. Hope, fragile, flickering, had returned. But it wouldn't last. A week later, Camille was awakened by a low growl. Rex. She ran to Nia's room. Her daughter was at the window again, Rex by her side, rigid and alert. Camille followed their gaze and froze. There, at the edge of the yard, a shadow. A figure. Watching. The light snapped on, and the figure vanished into the trees. The police came, found nothing, said nothing could be done. But Detective Evans believed her. He installed security cameras the next day. That night, it happened again. Same time. Same shadow. This time, it lingered longer. Rex growled. Nia stood still. Camille called Evans in the middle of the night, and the footage confirmed it. Someone had been there. But then came the drawing. Nia, who hadn't spoken in weeks, began to draw. Pictures of herself, Rex, and the yard. But always the shadow. One day, she added a detail, a long, jagged scar across the figure's hand. Camille showed Evans. Then came the van. Another drawing. A dark vehicle parked near the house, its windows tinted. Inside, the shadowy man. A red sleeve. The scar. Evans dug deeper. Found a match on a traffic cam. A man named Carl Devo. Petty theft. Trespassing. Scar on his right hand. Then came the raid. a cabin deep in the woods. Rex sensed it first. They found Emma Sullivan, the missing girl from a neighboring county, alive but terrified. Devo had taken her, just like he had once taken Nia. The courtroom was full, the trial swift, the evidence damning. But the silence still loomed, Nia's silence. She hadn't spoken in months, until she sat in the witness chair with Rex at her feet. Devo didn't flinch when the prosecutor pointed him out. But when Nia lifted her hand and gave Rex the subtlest signal, the dog growled. Deep. Certain. Recognizing. The courtroom froze. Devo cracked. The next day, he pled guilty. Life without parole. And then, in the quiet aftermath, Nia whispered her first words in months. Thank you. Healing is never instant. The shadows didn't vanish overnight. But the drawings began to change. The darkness faded. The colors returned. And one evening, as the sun set behind the trees, Camille heard something she thought she might never hear again. Laughter, followed by two words that shattered the remnants of silence. I missed you. Camille dropped to her knees, arms open, her heart full. Nia ran into her embrace, Rex trailing behind like the loyal guardian he had become. They would rebuild. Together. Because in that courtroom, in that house, and in that yard beneath the stars, a little girl had found her voice again. And this time, no one was going to take it away. The courtroom had gone quiet. The gavel had fallen. The verdict rendered. Carl Devo was gone. The man who had haunted their nights, lingered outside their windows, and left scars no one could see, now sat behind concrete walls, staring into a future he could no longer control. But for Camille and Nia, the story wasn't over. Justice might have been served, but healing didn't follow a schedule. In the days following the trial, Camille found herself navigating a strange new quiet. The silence in their home was no longer filled with fear, but it still echoed with memory. The porch light stayed on longer than needed. The locks were checked twice, sometimes 3 times. She couldn't help it. Trauma didn't ask permission to linger. But it was Nia who surprised her. The little girl who once sat frozen by the window now ventured farther each day, from her bedroom to the kitchen, then the backyard, always with Rex close. At first, she only whispered a few words. Water, please. Rex, sit. Then one night, as Camille tucked her in, she softly asked, will you stay till I sleep? Camille's heart cracked open. Yes, baby. Always. Meanwhile, Detective Evans didn't rest. Though the trial had ended, he couldn't shake the feeling that Devo hadn't worked alone. Something about the cabin, the meticulousness of the crimes, the lack of physical evidence, none of it added up for a man who'd been sloppy enough to appear on a public traffic cam. Camille had seen it in his eyes too, that fleeting flicker during the trial, not just guilt, but fear. Fear of something or someone else. Evans began pulling case files from nearby parishes. He found patterns. Too many cases of children reporting being watched or having vivid nightmares, dismissed as night terrors or imagination. All near wooded properties. All within a 50-mile radius of Bellwood. He took it to his captain, then the district attorney. No one wanted to reopen old wounds. So he came to Camille. I need your help, he said one afternoon, seated at her kitchen table, Rex lying faithfully nearby. With what? She asked, setting a mug of tea in front of him. Getting them to listen. Camille didn't hesitate. What do you need? The media had loved the story when Devo was captured, a child rescued, a brave dog, a mother's relentless instincts. Camille decided if they wanted a story, she'd give them one more, this time, louder. She went public. With Evans by her side, she sat down for a televised interview with the local news. She didn't recount the trauma. She recounted the patterns, the systemic failures, the dismissals from law enforcement, the emotional labor placed solely on victims. She ended with a call to action. If you've experienced something like this, speak. Don't let your silence be mistaken for peace. Let it be heard as a warning. The reaction was immediate. Letters, emails, messages from parents, guardians, even teachers who remembered odd behavior, strange sightings, hushed confessions from children. Evans compiled everything into a timeline, and together with Camille, they built a coalition. They called it the Nia Initiative. Its mission was simple: mandatory trauma response training for law enforcement and teachers, more funding for therapy animals, and a centralized system for tracking non-criminal but suspicious child-centered incidents, things that were once dismissed. Camille found herself testifying before the state legislature just 4 months after Devo's sentencing. Nia, now speaking in full sentences, sat beside her with Rex, a calming force under the harsh lights and murmuring crowd. My daughter didn't lose her voice, Camille told the lawmakers. It was taken from her, and it was a dog who helped bring it back, not because he spoke for her, but because he stood by her until she was ready to speak again. We need more of that. Less judgment. More listening. The Louisiana Child Vigilance Act passed 3 months later. Meanwhile, life in Bellwood slowly found a new rhythm. Camille returned to work part-time at the hospital. Her co-workers welcomed her with cautious warmth, unsure of how to navigate the weight of her story. But Camille didn't need pity. She needed purpose. She began volunteering with the therapy dog program that had given her daughter a second chance. Nia started sessions with a trauma-informed art therapist named Ms. Adeline. Their first session, Nia handed over her notebook full of old drawings. "This is what I saw," she said. It was the first time she'd willingly initiated a conversation about that night. Camille watched her daughter bloom in bursts. The backyard that once held shadows now echoed with laughter. Camille built a small vegetable garden beside the fence, and Nia helped plant marigolds and tomatoes. Rex would lie under the sun, tail thumping as bees buzzed nearby. One morning, Camille found Nia sitting beside the garden, drawing. The paper was bright, sky blue, with golden sunlight, green grass, and in the middle, her, Camille, and Rex. All three smiling. When Camille asked what the drawing was called, Nia smiled and said, "Home." But even with peace, there were reminders. One rainy afternoon, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside was a small, faded photograph. An old snapshot of Carl Devo as a teenager, standing with another man, tall, gaunt, eyes too familiar. Scrawled on the back were 5 chilling words. He wasn't working alone. Evans took it seriously. DNA analysis eventually identified the man in the photo as Elijah Brandt, a known drifter with a history of child endangerment, last seen in Georgia 3 years ago. The file had gone cold. Until now. Evans looked at Camille after showing her the report. "We may have more work to do." She nodded, resolute. "Then we start again." A year passed. The cabin where Emma Sullivan had been held was demolished. In its place, the community built Hollow Light Park, named after the darkness that had been pierced by truth. At the opening ceremony, Camille gave a short speech, Nia standing shyly by her side. When asked if she wanted to say anything, Nia stepped up to the microphone and said, softly, "Thank you for helping me feel safe again." The crowd went still. Then came a wave of applause, gentle at first, then rising. Not for spectacle, but for strength. Camille wept. Today, Nia writes stories. Long ones. Sometimes with talking animals. Sometimes with brave girls and deep forests. Rex is always in them, loyal and fierce, with a heart too big to be just a dog. She reads them to Camille on the porch, her voice growing louder with each sentence. Sometimes, there are shadows in her stories. But unlike before, they always lose. Because Nia Delaney had learned something most people take a lifetime to understand. Even in silence, truth waits. And when it's ready, it speaks. And it roars.